Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. This episode is a unique one. I am sharing a new concept that I have, in some sense, given words to, new words to. And I will be speaking about logic, how it is seen, but first I want to share the idea I have developed so that people can discriminate that when I say in the title, loss analysis, logic of situation analysis, what that implies. First, I would like to begin by saying that I have a perception on evolution uh, that I have modeled in a certain way, and it's different than traditional views on evolution. I perceive that there were 4 phases to evolution, and I perceive that we are in the 3rd phase currently, going to the 4th. Now I'll explain what I mean by these. First, let us consider that there was an unconscious world. Or let me say it like this, that currently when we look at what we are, we see it's a relationship of a self, a sense of self in a world. And the self relies on the senses arising from the world. That means before we can wonder about free will, the mystery of the human being and all that, we need a world first. You need a world first, then something in it to ask for the mystery, to wonder about the mystery. So if the listener can keep in mind that all human psychology is different relationships of a sense of self with the world. Now these relationships, the self and the world, they can change. There's moments where the self can be known, the world can be unknown, the self can be known, the world can be known. The self can be unknown, the world can be known, and the self can be unknown and the world can be unknown. So just to give that model. Now, to the 4 phases of evolution, you can say this is Mr. Within's view on evolution. First thing that I consider was that there was, aside from giving a concept to space, there was just stuff here. So I can totally see that just like there was a moment where I wasn't born, there was a moment where we can say creaturehood hadn't been born on the surface of the earth. Now, I am considering that time far back, as an unconscious world. That means there was no consciousness to even notice a world. It was an unconscious world. From the unconscious world, after the long expanses of time, we came to the unconscious self. So from an unconscious world, there came an unconscious self, and this is what I consider to be the fascination of the objective evolution, where suddenly creaturehood emerged. Okay? It wasn't just Earth, it was Earth with something on it. And that thing that was on it was the uniqueness of our biological existence being separate from the Earth. Do you know? That means creaturehood is like, it's like the person's looking how weird trees are, and then and then the person sees that it's as if it's like life didn't have legs. At first, that's what I'm trying to say. And then through the unconscious self, there came creaturehood, the limbs. We suddenly became not to ourselves, but to an outsider. Let's say an extraterrestrial was watching us, we would be a self. We would be establish the first relationship that our body and the earth are separate. Not to ourselves from the outside view. Now, after the unconscious self, I've considered there's the conscious self, and this is something they don't teach, and I consider it the subjective evolution, that something occurred and we became a subject to ourselves. And I would say this is where the mystery of language leaves us. You know, that what happened if we go far back to this creature that now it has such sophisticated use of language, of awareness, of attention compared to all other species on this planet. We are aware of our mortality. Most animals are just going by, based on the program of the ecosystem. We've managed to not just only disconnect from the ecosystem, but to be able to reconnect to it in a different way. You know? As if we used to be Earth, now we became people and we're like, oh, we are on Earth. What is this Earth? You know? And so a new dimension, you can say, pretty much this creature roamed without, you can say, mindlessly on in the unconscious world, this unconscious self, until it suddenly, I don't know, noticed its shadow, saw itself in the mirror, wondered whose hands are these, or maybe thought itself to be some other creature in front of it. You know, there was something that made the creature realize it is a creature to itself. That means creaturehood was here, but to the creature there was no creaturehood. Then something unique happened, and I'm considering this the subjective evolution. And the creature became a subject, became, you can say, an inner creature to itself. Now, this is the third phase. The first was the unconscious world, UW. The second, the unconscious self, US. And the third, CS, the conscious self. The fourth phase I am considering to be the conscious world. And this is where language is the cocoon where individual conscious creatures discriminate that beyond this uh, classification of sound and symbol, sound and image, beyond language, we are the world. Right now, technically, if we consider a Rene Descartes mind-body dualism, if the mind was in its own dimension and the body was in its own dimension, it's as if the mind has an ability to consider just a singular body in this dimension. But I feel maybe give it some time, a couple thousand years from now, we'll most likely be inseparable from being a separate creature or the whole thing. We will literally, our attention will not be confined to individualism. Now, where does logic come into this? So the whole point of me explaining the view I have, the model on evolution I perceive, is that now we're no longer just a moving object. We are also a moving subject to ourselves. Evolution became a subject to itself. You know. So now the subjective view, when we talk about logic, we are talking about language's meaning in accordance to what is really there, I would say. Because we use language, because we are divided between the known and the unknown, that means every moment has known variables, has unknown variables. Every moment, if you consider the inner realm and the outer realm, if you consider that in front of your eyes you're an object, but behind your eyes you're an unknown subject. So in front of your eyes you're a known object, behind your eyes unknown subject. Now, I would say when we're wondering about logic, it all has to do with validity. And it is pretty much, how would I say this? We have declarations, and then we have the declarations, how they, what's the term I'm looking for? Claims are made, there is a premise, and then there comes conclusion. The most immediate, you can say, like a Tetris game, the most immediate, earliest pieces will suggest the conclusion. Now, because we're creatures that have in front of our eyes, we're a physical creature. Behind our eyes, we're subjective. It is all about the validity of language in accordance to what we see. So when I sit here and I say, behind your eyes, awareness, attention is attributeless. Okay, the validity of that statement is not in accordance to the outer realm position. It is in accordance to, it's as if like there's two rooms, okay, and in one room we cannot ignore the design of that room, and in the other room we cannot ignore the design of that room, if I can say it. Here I've made a note of it. Of course, the term logos, it was originated from Heraclitus. Aristotle really had ideas on logic first, and then this got updated, where it was as if Aristotle's logic wasn't enough. Here it says logic, the systematic study of valid rules of inferences, the relationships that lead to the acceptance of one position on the basis of a set of other propositions. Excuse me, the acceptance of one proposition on the basis of a set of other propositions. Pretty much how the inner realm processes the outer realm by starting from the inner realm. And because we start from the inner realm, there's prone to error. If we were purely, just purely, I would say, physical beings with no mysterious phenomenology occurring, without abstraction, language cannot breathe. And if language cannot breathe, it cannot exist. There is a reason, it's like the person in nature, like the natural being, we can say the being, people don't, like, let's say, there was a dictator that came, and this dictator had only one hand. And this dictator was like, everybody has to have one hand in the nation, It's as if we are born naturally. Naturally, what is there, we don't take it away. Do you know? We don't take away what's naturally there. That means the person has two arms. You don't suddenly get rid of one arm because it's like the outer realm says so. Do you know? So I would say when it comes to the human being, we're wondering about the position and the place of imagination, abstraction, that we understood that it took a long phase of evolution. A brain emerged out of nowhere. Now this brain is projecting this subjectivity, and what has occurred is that this subjectivity throughout history has been taken seriously because it was taken seriously, for examples, certain religious idealisms and whatnot, and because it was taken seriously, people have pushed away the importance of the abstract, do you know? There is different types of logic. There is formal logic, informal logic. These are, when I was doing research on this, it was suggesting that there is a dispute. The same way analytical philosophers and continental philosophers are disputing the exact meaning of each position. I would say there is something that in modern times that people may have considered, that logic has to be one form. You see, because we are treating ourselves as our language, we are limited by the language. The logic is limited to some degree by the language that can communicate it. I'll give you an example. There is a person who pushes a door. The door doesn't open, the person leaves that door, you're back there. You're before the person, you're coming after that person, and you see this person push the door doesn't open and leave. Do you know? Now, based on how you consider the immediate situation, the variables for reasoning, the known variables for reasoning get solidified. So a person can be like, okay, that door is closed. A person tried it. It's like imagine the first statement. A person pushed the door, you know, and the door didn't open. Because the person pushed the door didn't open, the door doesn't open. Do you know? But it would be, I would say that would be a sort of linearization, you know? But I would say if somebody is there, somebody may have suddenly, after a while, somebody may come and be like, wait, this guy never pulled the door. He was just pushing. Do you see? So the whole key thing here, it says that logic is the systematic study of valid rules of inferences. What is it inferring? What is it suggesting? Do you see? It's abstract. When it comes to the human use of language, it's abstract. And it's as abstract as the idea of you right now if you were to close your eyes. You see, our eyes are in a phenomenal position. You know, can you imagine if our eyes were outside of us, hovering in the air, and we were seeing ourselves third person 24/7? I feel because we see each other in first person. I have a twin brother. I can tell you it's like because we see things in first person, we become an expert on our world first than ourselves. That means I think it would just think about it. Imagine history had to reset from the beginning. How many years, centuries would it take, you know, or millions of years would it take for the human being to suddenly be like, yo, I've been seeing things in first person. Could it be another way? I could see myself, you know. I have my own personal views on formal and informal logic, and the reason I'm sharing them is because it is a mosh pit of conclusions for now. I would say for me, we have to honor the position of words. That means sometimes when I say a word, I am looking at its lettering as well. I remember saying the word nowhere, noticing suddenly it says now here in it. Do you know? So I would say that my view on formal logic is that the validity of the arguments that are built up, that means the premises come first, the first Tetris blocks, and then that whole Tetris picture that's finished, imagine with a limited Tetris pieces coming, you know, that fixed picture is the logical, I would say, I call it loss analysis. This is a term I'm using. You know, it's not something that's out there. I Googled it. There's nothing like that. The reason I'm saying it is because many moments in my life, I have noticed that the irrationality of what tends to occur with the moment is because the emotions are justifying what the value of the moment is before that whole third person ability and ego vision ability to observe the design of your moment. What does that mean? That means you may put an engine, I'll give you, there's different people, okay? Some people, you put a car engine in front of them, they're like, oh. Oh man, it's some people you put a car engine in front of them, they're like they get a feeling. They're like, what is this? What is this in front of me? You know. And some people you put a car engine in front of them, you know. Or I'll give you an example. I'll give you a better example. You put a car, someone who's never, two people who've never seen a car, okay? Or let's say you give a car, same car to two people. One person looks at it, emotion, I'm gonna drive this, I'm gonna feel great, yeah. One person, before having an emotion, you can say, is looking at what is this? What engine does it have? Do you know? Back in the day, vehicles were 1 horsepower, guys. I could totally see back in the day somebody, imagine the first person who made a chariot, like showing off. It's like, buddy, look at what I got. I got a wagon. What do you have? You know, guys, I think it's inevitable. I gotta share this. In these talks, I will probably cough, you know, and it's one of those things where if it bothers whoever's listening, I understand. You know, you're justified. You can rage. You can share your rage openly. If you can think as if I'm a random person and you just listen to the concepts, forget who I am, forget all of that, and just hear it on a concept level, on a design level, if people listen, then it will be easier, I would say. And if the coughs bother people, one thing they can do is they could play a song. They go on YouTube, open a new tab, play another song, and let that song filter the extra noises in the talk. You know, it's up to the listeners, of course. But I'm alive once. I'm trying out whatever it is I'm doing. So if 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 patience listens, then but I'll say this, that there is one thing, that there's so many noises throughout the day the person hears, just because they don't have their attention there, they don't receive it. So I would say that if anybody zooms in on sound, puts their attention on sound, they will notice endless sounds. You know, it's like meditating in the middle of a university field. You know, like a university square. Anyways, to continue, the the loss analysis, um, guys, pretty much I was like, we need to have a logic of situation analysis. Nobody's give this a term, but it could be that any moment the person there is there, they are looking at the designs of the moment. From starting from the physical designs. That's what science is, by the way. I don't know if people realize it. You're noticing design and you're accepting design in accordance to the result of the experiment. But ultimately, it's like you tell people what is an atom, geometrical shapes come in their mind. They envision geometrical shapes. So reality is on a, believe it or not, instantaneous design level, as existential design level, and then as we move, we create points of focus and reference. You know, that means one can make an argument that how could human beings ever have logic if they don't know what they are? We can make an argument that renders logic void from the beginning. That means it's only been to the person. For the person, it has been, you know. I'm saying the point is that the more earlier you go back in time, there was less conceptual complexity for certainty. Do you know? this conceptual complexity has blessed us, but it's an advantage and also a disadvantage. Its disadvantage is we have divided and conquered the realm. We have pushed ourselves in endless confusion. But the advantage is from that endless confusion is arising endless new resolutions to the realm. So we have pretty much confused the world, but in doing so managed to keep the illusion of the self going, you know? The illusion of the free will, or its elusive appearance at least. So the focus is on design, and I would say formal logic and informal logic should be that one is based on the certainty of the inner realms, the other is based on the certainty of the outer realms. So in any situation I think about it, I don't just think about what do things physically imply. There's like layers, there's like orbiting layers of context behind uh, the attention. You know, guys, sometimes I just realized something. Sometimes if you hear a cough and you dislike it, think as if it's someone else who coughed. Think it's just someone else's cough, you know? That means technically if I was recording in public and somebody coughed behind me, that sound would get in there inevitably, you know? So the person would be, in that case, they wouldn't be like... Anyways, we are creatures that we generate abstraction. I will tell you, thoughts could be poetically seen as a scent, you know? I don't mean a penny, I mean SCENT, you know, as a sort of aroma, as a sort of aura. Do you know that means the aura of objective existence is subjective experience? Do you know? One thing a person can do in any situation is instantly command from the realm the designs prior to personal input. That means, let's say you find yourself in a, you open your eyes and you realize you're like, I don't know, like the movies or something, like you're in a random party or something. Okay, so or you open your eyes, suddenly you're in a random world or a place you've never been. What do you do? You have no choice but to begin from scratch looking at the designs active in the moment. If we think that in this life there is objects and subjects, pretty much if we look at the objects first, then the subjects, we will find no reason for the subject. If we look at the subject first, we find endless reasons for an object. You know, this object in front of me, it could be, you know, poetically the will of the divine creator, or it could be my will, or it could be the will of this iced tea cup in front of me, or it could be the will of this pen on the writing on this piece of paper. Do you know what I mean? Like it's this whole notion that if it is based on the inner realms, there is the permission for the extension of, like, here's the thing. I look at, just like a person plays chess, what is happening there? They look at the chessboard. It's one chessboard. The pieces are still, the pieces are like statues, but in the mind of the person is seeing all the ways the pieces can move. Cast your mind back to when you learned the alphabet. It was a strange symbol on a wall. Then, as it was embraced, used, accepted, it became there. It became second nature. And I feel that in this evolutionary process we are in, the amount of significance we give to how we are an idea in the moment, an individual idea, that significance is going to integratively evaporate. What does that mean? That means your whole life you have been paying attention to how you are the candle wax. And now someone's telling you, pay attention to how you are the candle flame. That means, imagine if from the beginning of your life somebody was like, oh, you're a mind, sweetheart, you're a mind, not a body. Imagine how much concentration and ability to use attention there would be. Because the fear is in the identification. What does that mean? That means if it's winter, I wear a jacket. I'm identifying with that jacket. Okay? Now, if in winter somebody takes that jacket, takes my identity, takes my ego, I will freeze. But I will realize there is always the person there prior to the jacket that can be taken off or not. I am honestly saying that our species is wearing the unknown minds are through known bodies wearing language like jackets and masks. Honestly, like it's pretty much like Tokyo Ghoul of language going on. And of course, I gotta say something. Anybody who's seen Sherlock Holmes, there's this story I'll tell you. It's about Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and they've taken a break from the crime, and they're lying on this grass field, and it's at night, and Sherlock Holmes turns around to Watson and says, Watson, what do you notice? you know and Watson looks at the sky, and he says, Holmes, I see, the universe, the stars, the endlessness of the I see endless stars. Then Sherlock Holmes is like, no, Watson, tell me, what do you see? You know? And Watson is getting intimidated. Watson is like, Watson looks at the sky and he says, okay, I don't just see stars, endless stars. I see time. I see the passage of human beings. I see evolution. And it's going more and more, And then Sherlock Holmes is like, tell me, what do you see? Watson, what do you see? Again, he's shouting, you know. And Watson looks and he's like, oh my God, Holmes, I see the inevitability where, he says everything. He says everything as far as man's knowledge knows, And then Sherlock Holmes turns around, he's like, no, you fool. The tent is missing. I don't know, this was a joke I saw online, guys. But the whole point is, the reason I bring up Sherlock Holmes is in the movie, you would see that moment where the directors were brilliant, and of course the actor, Robert Downey Jr., was incredible in animating that character. And there was a moment where Sherlock Holmes saw in his mind the event take place earlier, and then he just followed it. What did that mean? Every time in the Sherlock Holmes movies where that slow motion thing was going on, He was living the moment in his mind before he was living outside. And there was something about pretty much when it comes to arguments, they're either based on induction or deduction. So what does that mean? Either we're going from the general to the specific, or from the specific to the general. From the specific to the general, they call that deduction. From the general view of the whole situation to the specific, they call that induction. That means astrophysicists are inducing, I would say. But archaeologists are deducing, you know. Something like that, just trying to get a point across with it. So what does that mean? That means it's like you're an attention that has found itself present in a moment. As your eyes are open in the conscious waking state, three primary states human beings are in: conscious waking state, dream state, deep sleep. Okay, 1/3 of the life the person's sleeping. I don't know. 1/3 of it, I mean, it's not that they're dreaming, but it's just mobility, and it's just 2/3 conscious waking state. But like, I don't know how I can give a time to dreams, but like a duration to dreams. But I'll tell you just that we are in the conscious waking state when we wake up in the morning. When we wake up in the morning, there is an immediately accessible to us an outer landscape in front of our eyes and a self, a physical self. But there's also accessible this viewer that can do anything in this life but will not be able to view itself. What does that mean? That means in the Upanishads they said the seer of the seen is unseen. That means the one who is aware they are aware doesn't have an attribute. So I'm saying you're this unknown viewer that finds itself in the presence of an energetic based moment. Keep the first law of thermodynamics in mind. An energetic moment. And upon light, as it is accepted currently, light hits an object, enters your eyes. You see what you are being plus light, plus whatever the light picked up as a, I don't know, subtle energy carrier system. Light is known to be the smallest energy carrier system for them. What I'm saying is you find yourself as a self in a world. Now, if you think you know the self and the world is unknown, your excitement would go outside. If you think the outer world is known, but you don't know who you are, your excitement takes you to your inner realms. You know? Now, the whole point is not to go and stay in the inner realms, not to just think you're a mind and everything, not to be a solipsist or a nihilist, but to think, sorry, not to just be a solipsist, but, and neither to be a nihilist in the sense of not to be just an object based. You see, it's object plus unknown subject happening. That unknown subject is called the hard problem of consciousness. The spontaneity of phenomena. And the only secular idea I found was that it renders the brain as an antenna. If there is spontaneous, meaningless, unique patterns that arise, meaningless to the context held, that means imagine somebody opens their eyes in a room and they think that's their room. And they're like, this is my room. You know, suddenly they realize it was never their room. You see? Not only the concepts required to change, but the contexts change even quicker and can. That means that's the whole difference between success and failure. The context. You go tell the success. I don't know how many people have talked to successful people, but I've had rare opportunities. And when I say successful, of course, everybody is successful in on multiple levels of things. You know, success isn't just in one dimension. I mean, like it's not just monetary. But I'm saying any big project that was went forth, as if the person built a skyscraper and you talk to them. That's technically for an if you were an architect and there was another architect that had built a skyscraper and you talk to that person, you know, that would technically be a mode of success in your eyes, you know. And the whole point is there was something in behind the eyes of the person that was keeping them going, regardless of the outer circumstance. They told Napoleon it was impossible. He became emperor and he said impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. I was like, no way. That's the thing. If you are rendering this life as atomically meaningless, just stardust in the void, just weird, just random stuff happening, you know, then we have returned to the origin of at least the Greek mythological universe where things were chaos. That means I'm like, I didn't, it didn't take us like we didn't evolve for 4.5 billion years just to become master complainers of a realm that it is our birthright to be in, to move. That means it's like, what if we are the pilots? The responsibility of a pilot is very different than the responsibility of just an advanced communicator. The pilot knows his air is everyone's air. But the advanced communicator's error can be communicated back, can be fixed, you know? Pretty much uh, all that has occurred so far has been a journey of and accumulation through memory of different snapshots of existence. Literally, if we treat the head of the person as a camera, like the biological position of the being as a camera, this camera has been going, all right, take a photo from here, take a photo from here, film this, film that. And so it is a storehouse of different versions of yourself, really. You know, this is why it's very complex. It was something that I mean, honestly, it was one of those things where in my bucket list, I was like, if Jordan Peterson was around, I would ask him. But it's one of those things where I sometimes think that it is so complex in a changing world to accept a norm that doesn't change as quick as the world. That means change is being done by people's viewpoints changing, correct? You know, people in the French Revolution were starving. It's like they were like, "Holy shit, we're gonna die anyways." So, so they, for example, they rebelled. They had a reason to rebel. You know, but now information transference between the inner realms of people through language, through media, through all of this, it's creating of our minds are changing way quicker than we have a capacity to change the outer realms. And if we don't have patience with how ahead our inner realms are, then we let go of them. You know, because we are a living being, it's like you got to see it to believe it. The person's seeing, all right, I'm alive right now. Now, the context of this life, whether we should just deduce a conclusion, you know, religion is inducing, really. You start from the general picture, then you see how something is fragmented. I'll share a cool story with people here. I was at this house party. This was during, it was like a year ago, where Anyways, long story short, I was in film school. I went there to see an actor friend of mine, and I found myself being there in the party and whatnot. And the host was this person named Desta. His name was Desta, and he came up in front of everyone, and he's like, "I have multiple personalities." Literally, he came up in front of everyone, you know, and he said, "I have multiple personalities, and one personality of mine is like is like a like a beast. One personality of mine is like this." And then I remember I was watching this, and I was like, "Hey, man, you would have had more success if you showed off like." So I remember I asked him a question, and I'm like, "Hey, man, do you believe in this notion that you're some sort of like sovereign consciousness, some sort of soul, in or this idea?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I asked them, "Do each of your personalities have a different soul, or are they the same soul?" And I remember seeing that gaze in his eyes, where it was literally, he was like, "Oh, like literally the mask," you know. And then he responded, "They're all him." And that's when I realized the fragmentation of the psyche is for the outer realm. So it's not natural, I would say. Naturally, we are what we are. There is that feeling, like, the person doesn't suddenly say, "All right, I'm tired of my biological body, time to go into a robot body." It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like we accept what we are, you know? But anyways, the more multidimensional the realm has become, the more, of course, individualism has begun. That means any activity, it's like, what is a profession? A profession is an archetype based on the activity. What is a name? Let's say a person's name. It's I don't know. It's like there's so many ways that language and nouns and an object are being linked. I would say the most simplest design-based analysis I have is that, okay, what's going on? There's stuff here, and this stuff changes. Basically, we're in a world where you can do whatever. You can try to be a statue, but you can't. You know. So nature is endlessly surprising itself by past patterns of knowledge through the memory, through what has been accumulated so far, endlessly trying to press against the new unknown. You know, I hope to see a day where the species no longer is burdened by language. Every person can notice, they can step out of the linguistic simulation instantly, you know. And what does that mean? That means it would be the end of judgment. Why? Because every subject, just like an object can be looked at different angles, a subject can be animate to different conscious viewers from different angles. So what does that mean? That means matter is here, all right, but all our ideas on it, sometimes the thin ice breaks, sometimes the seasons change and there is no ice. So anyways, this loss analysis, I would say conduct a loss analysis whenever you're in any moment where you don't know. You don't know what to do. You can get feedback. So what does that mean? It's like when you don't know, first you gather, then you aim. That means all those people who, let's say, are, oh God, how do I say this? You got to look at the world, then move in it. And if you look at the world, it is not a concept. That means look at an object and tell me what percentage of that object is a subject only to your eyes. That means religion, philosophy, science, it's just ink on a piece of paper. Not their overall intentions. I mean how the society, how we as 8 billion conscious creatures retain. I'm not trying to dismiss the precision of the medical sciences. I'm saying simply that whatever accurate experiment that a scientist conducts, they are bringing it to a social society, to a tribe of creatures that also have an emotional dimension and have memories with piled up versions of their self that at random times can evoke. So what does that mean? That means it's like, it's not that it's literally, we are fiction. Non-fiction is a fiction to the temporary. So before the non-fiction, there was first fiction. Then you can have non-fiction. You can say first there requires to be truth, then, okay, I can't see truth. Illusion, holy shit. So I would say, guys, pretty much I find human beings can contribute, they can serve the advancement of their civilization towards an advanced civilization by serving the body of the civilization or serving the mind of the civilization. The body of the civilization is all those human beings who they are trying to help continue efficiently the physical manifestation of our specieshood. But I would say those who serve the mind of the species, they're here to kind of shake the linguistic simulation of it. And the best way strategy is to wonder about the source of how attention, form, and whatever that inner realm movement is the meaning. That means when I ask honestly, when I look in matter, it's silent. The atomic realm is quiet. You know? But when we come this atomic complexity becomes the human being, then it's super noisy. So many opinions, so many views. And I will tell you, there is a silence where fear, silence, and stillness are don't are you can say they are. Fear doesn't have a jurisdiction. Fear cannot pass through those doors. So any person who has comprehended how everything begins and ends in silence and stillness, you will treat just like how a Zen master would drink from a teacup, and in that moment there was no Zen master, there was no teacup, there was just drinking tea. So I would say it would become something where there was no self, no world, on a very, I would say, elevated mystical position, in your elevated mystical inner rhythm. Let's say you treat your lifetime as if it is the masterful expression of an unknown competence that gazes upon the known incompetence. All must redeem their eyes from their own weakness. This cosmos requires to pilot here, I would say. You have to first learn how to pilot alone. After you learn how to pilot alone, your attention and energy throughout the day doesn't focus on the self that much. When you don't focus on yourself that much, what you see is the world. So I could tell you that way I have resolved the content issue of these talks is that I look at the world where the content is. The world is endless and it's unknown, and there's this illusion of normality, this illusion that we figured it out, we know, we got it. And I will tell you, the species is like Jon Snow. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Carl Jung, I remember hearing this from Jordan Peterson. Kimberly, I was reading your chat comment in the chat section, I would say. Jordan Peterson, he was speaking about Carl Jung and how Carl Jung had suggested that there requires to be something of you left behind, then you march through into this unknown. He didn't say it like this, but this is the way it came across to me. But it was what Jordan Peterson was saying was you pretty much confront your own shadow, and then you learn to accept it, and then you return back to the inner child. So first you start off. I mean, this is Mr. Within's commentary. Keep that in mind. I would say. First, you are the inner child. There is more unknown than the known. The cool thing is, in the child, most children don't have an opinion on the idea of mind yet. Your inner child realizes the chaotic dimensions of the world, and at first that inner child requires to be pushed away, and new steps into the unknown bring forth the new archetype. After you have found mastery, let's say in the ultimatum of the new, think as if you were a person. Pretty much this is the whole thing. You were a soldier, you had like the movie Gladiator, you had a family, but then you went and became a general, you were no longer that same family man, then at the end of it, the whole came back to you being with your family. That means once you had achieved what you required to, in order, by deviating from your nature, your inner child's nature, then you return pretty much, It's literally like a question mark. Um, um, it's like a question mark if you could see a three-dimensional curve from the, how do I say it? It's a return. You first don't accept what you are, then life opens your eyes, then you realize, regardless of how much chaos you endure through, regardless of how much order you endure through, it is just happening as one nature. That is the ultimate. There is no golden concept to put on a shelf. Anyways, guys, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. So I'm back, guys, to continue. Every moment we wake up, we are rebuilding the moment back into familiar pretty much we are like a phoenix resurrecting ideologically every day. Ideologically, as a subject, we go to sleep. In sleep, the person is, there is no subject, and then the person is pure, or well, just in an existentially, like there's experience is absent. So I think if a single gene is self-replicating, I find that we as a collection of genes have that ultimate instruction in common. And it's as if the person is trying to replicate themselves as an idea every day, waking up from the void of deep sleep. So we can say our psychology is behaving like a self-replicating cell, but it's a self-replicating self. It's a self-replicating subject rather than a self-replicating object. So our psychology is replicating itself. When we see another person, we don't see who they are, we don't have their eyes, we see what we have seen in them. Do you know? We are imbuing them, just like a person reads words on looks at ink on a piece of paper, they see meaning. So we look at a person's face and who we think they are to us, how we feel and whatnot. We are creating a sense of other by actually creating ourself in the other. That means the yogis would say, ask who am I? Wonder about that original self. The original self. And what we find ourself to be, yeah, language is the replication. That means to me, speech feels like binary. Anyways, I wanted to go into a quote tunnel, guys. The quote tunnel is, I pretty much read a bunch of quotes. Okay. Niels Bohr. No, you're not thinking. You're just being logical. Aristotle. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. The Dalai Lama. If one's cause is supported by sound reasoning, there's no point in using violence. It is those who have no motive other than selfish desire and who cannot achieve their goal through logical reasoning who rely on force. Christopher Zeman. Mathematics is not arithmetic. Though mathematics may have arisen from the practices of counting and measuring, it really deals with logical reasoning in which theorems, general and specific statements can be deduced from the starting assumptions. It is perhaps the purest and most rigorous of intellectual activities and is often thought of as a queen of the sciences. Rita Mae Brown says if the world were a logical place, men would ride side saddle. Okay. Greg McCowan says play stimulates the parts of the brain involved in both careful logical reasoning and carefree unbound exploration. See, that means those urges are there. You know, it's like you can look at any animal in nature. They have moments where they're intense, you know, violent, vicious, totally. There's no concern for other, just concern for themselves. And there's certain moments where the creature's attention is not on themselves, and the creature's playing with another. You know. Like animals are chill. Tadao Ando says in architecture there is a part that is the result of logical reasoning and a part that is created through the senses. There is always a point where they clash. I don't think architecture can be created without that collision. Leo Tolstoy says God cannot be understood by logical reasoning, but only by submission. Yeah, guys, that's a general theme in religious experience where if it's coming from you, it's not something else. Friedrich Nietzsche says, I have not come to know atheism as a result of logical reasoning, and still less as an event in my life. In me, it is a matter of instinct. Paul D. Boyer says, more by example than by word. My father taught me logical reasoning, compassion, love of others, honesty and discipline applied with understanding. You know, that's the thing. If you want to be logical, you can't love others. I don't know how a person. When I say logical, I mean because it's based on the context. So if the person is saying survival is the most logical outcome, you know, then it becomes selfishness becomes totally justified. You see, it's just that certain things we can see how they happen, so we can linearize it. Certain things, maybe we're just suddenly seeing it in the middle phase of it, and we can't tell exactly, we can't correlate it through our own perception accurately. Mason Cooley says logic teaches rules for presentation, not thinking. Edward de Bono says the concept of logical thinking is selection, and this is brought about by the process of acceptance and rejection. Rejection is the basis of logical thinking. You know, the ultimate um, you know, it's like one can reject that which has form. That which doesn't have form, it's like, what are you rejecting? Rudolf Steiner says, because of their very nature, science and logical thinking can never decide what is possible or impossible. Their only function is to explain what has been ascertained by experience and observation. I mean, that's not just science. Everything is limited to that. You know, we have to see something happen experientially, then correlate language to it. Now, if the person doesn't care for the experiential component, do you know, then it's like the observation can be just claimed. What does that mean? That means it's like your ancestors, I don't know, believed the earth was flat, you know, then you don't, I'm just saying it's like it's, how do I say it? We are explorers. To go beyond the humility of the explorer is to evoke attachment either to the inner realms or in the outer realms. That means I use language in different ways throughout these talks, but really, for me, language is just how does Tony Stark feel about the Iron Man suit? From the beginning, it's just a simple event, this nature. It's an event taking place. We find ourselves in. In front of our eyes, we find ourselves in a world. Behind our eyes, the worlds find themselves inside us. It's such a mysterious position that I don't know how people have not been hyper fascinated. Like, what's the point of having a mind to see probabilities? What's the point of your mind seeing probabilities to implement them? That means a person can see a lot of ideas, but if the ideas don't go anywhere, what was the point? Do you know how many ideas? It's just like pretty much for me at first there was I required really I had there was a sort of effort. Okay, after a while you just see whatever you do in this life, it's like a moment. It's like awareness, like the candle flame in a dark room is illuminating a sort of spherical range to itself for itself. I don't know, whatever way the attention chooses to classify the moment, if the person at least fixes the garbage in, garbage out situation, that means what you input in the system is what you get out of it. If you can fix, at least the free will has an ability to fix what you input into the system. That means a person may not be able to control the weather like that storm from the X-Men, but the mind is here to be used. It's here to be activated. The DNA is an instrument. And as this instrument, what activates it, I would say just instinct and intuition, listening to how the moment, it's like after, imagine you perceived all the designs to the moment, you subjectively, conceptually had a reach of all the potential ways the moment could happen, then you would just be left with being. After the person does everything, well, what can you do? That means that's how I feel death would be like, where the person suddenly realizes, okay, you did stuff for a lifetime. Now, where's the attention going? And so if we can study our attention, if we can usher in a multidimensional advanced civilization, an advanced civilization with multidimensional tolerance, that means pretty much all the advice people in past history have given, just put the word multidimensional in front of it. They told you, if people said be charitable, be multidimensionally charitable. That means be tolerant to not just different dimensions of yourself, but to different dimensions of your world, which through yourself you perceive. I feel the species is living strangely in the outer realms too fast, in the inner realms too slow. It should be opposite to bring balance to it. That means we should make I feel we should design a system where if the person is working in that system, their energy, their effort, the ratio of their efforts, which is the energy it took to do something that day, how would I say this? It's energetic effort plus collective contribution equals satisfied individual. That's the equation. Guys, to end this talk, I might do a part 2 on this idea, or maybe not, I don't know. But there's definitely so much more to say about the topic. You see, no concept. I mean, things can be limited, can be specified, but all specifications have a relationship to the whole thing happening. Just like you can think about your heart alone, but your heart is not happening alone. It's occurring with your whole body. You know. You can think of a single finger on your hand, but that it's connected to the whole body. So technically, you can't think of the finger without the body. You see, it's like on an experiential level, it's like they're connected. I feel anybody in whatever work they're doing, let's say tomorrow you go to your work, wherever you are, whatever work you do, and you just either midway during your work or at some point just think about, if you were 1,000 years, or let's say 100 years ahead, or 1,000 years ahead, what kind of work would you do, or how would that same work update? That means wonder about the evolution of things. We have this attitude developed in human psychology where it's like, don't touch the cookie jar. That cookie jar has to be touched because that is the unknown. That is how knowledge, how the new is found. That means we should be hunter-gatherers of new ways, new and efficient ways to look at the civilization from our inner realms and to share that pretty much, you know. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I require to end the talk here, but much blessings and us. And whenever you can, just conduct a loss analysis. Just wonder about the design and how the simple has led to the complex in your moment. Just in any moment, a person can access the geometrical design dimension. It's so innate. Just like how a snowflake, you put it under a microscope, you see its geometry. If you saw the geometry inside a snowflake in three-dimensional in outer space, it'd be like an extremely advanced, like interstellar city. You know, you could see it as that. I would say more than logic and illogical filters of, or the language usage is that, I would say a person should just look at what is moving and what is still and what is unknown and what is known. And then in accordance to seeing those two, you will know if you require a simple effort or a complex effort to the moment. And then it's so important, declaration, that a person in the inner realms have to declare actually their outer realm movement. An example would be you see a tree and you close your eyes, you see yourself putting your left leg on the tree and then jumping up to the branch and holding on to the branch. You know, you see that in your mind, then you open your eyes and instantly do it, you know? So I would say, now that we are minds, the mystery of mind before matter is here. Language is really the skin of logic. So beyond language, the world is a quiet occurrence. It's just a silent event. You know, it's in accordance to what man values that we say it makes sense. That means it's like an alien could come and, you know, the alien, imagine let's say, I don't know, let's say it's in the future, literally there's alien immigration in regards to extraterrestrials living on Earth. The leaders of Earth shake hands with the extraterrestrial leaders. Let's say this is future, let's say a couple hundred years in the future, okay? And then for the first time, extraterrestrials are coming and becoming citizens of the Earth. And human beings are going to that extraterrestrial planet and becoming citizens of there, okay? So suddenly imagine you're walking in the street or you're, let's say, I don't know, hopefully there wouldn't be gas stations by then, but let's say there was a gas station, okay? So you'd go to the gas station and you would suddenly see this alien from another star system that has come to live on Earth is wearing clothing like a human being, but the alien it's at night and the alien is drinking from like the fuel. What do you call it? The fuel hose of a gas station. Now you, the logic of the person could just see that event, even forget for a second there's a alien there, and just perceive that it's illogical to drink that at all. You know, the person may even be concerned for the alien at that point. But then you begin to see that's much closer to what the alien consumed, for example. The alien, it was something that to that system was the logic of that system. You know, to our system, to the person watching that person's like, oh my God, what is this? You know, this is ridiculous. You know, so that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes it's not that there is something is logical or not. Everything is really unknown to us in a very proximity, in the range, in the amount of awareness that the mind's candle flame illuminates in the dark room of the cosmos. We have a certain ability to use logic. So you could say you could be the greatest logician, Okay, but the issue is it's based on how many stuff you see in the room, how much of the room you see. So logic is limited to your sight, to your perception. Perception limits logic. So perception is also what makes logic illogical. Because, people, I feel, often know that there is something more here before they move as an idea. That something more is so much held in mystery now that on a rock in the middle of nowhere, one human being in a universe of a billion trillion stars is saying, hey guys, do we know where we are? And there's so many answers, and that's the problem. Now we have come to a time where the questions, more questions need to be added to the system than answers. A question brings self-awareness. Do you know? That means imagine there's someone angry, and you just look at this angry person and you say, who are you right now? You know? Then suddenly the person comes into, there's an awareness there that returns. And freedom has such an important role. Freedom of expression is so crucial because there's a threshold of performance. The human being has to feel something to feel. Right now, I would say the species is acting before it is observing. If we can observe before we act, and then through all the probabilities, that means there was something called Occam's razor, where you're trying to look at the most simplest analysis of something. I would counter that and say, let's call it Mr. Within's uh, uh, okay, for the sake of the language and the terminology, let's say Mr. Within's razor. What I mean is you got to find the most complex. Why? Because to see how able this engine of probabilities behind your eyes is. Uh, what is better, to max out your effort then experience the consequence, or to just hold your effort and then inevitably realizing at the end of it, it all goes back to the unknown. We started from the unknown. Now we're known and we can speak and da 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 da. And then we go back to the unknown. That means we are a known performance of nature, but known to ourselves, and with the unique ability to communicate, our inner realms can be shared and transferred. That means it's like when a person speaks, that's an image file transfer. But it's not the exact image. It's just the sound. So it's like when I say apple, I'm remembering I don't know, in my childhood I saw an apple on a tree, you know? So I'm remembering that green small apple, when I think of an apple, But somebody may suddenly think of a red apple on a teacher's desk or something. But the word apple, and based on what words come after it and the speed of the language, and if a person realizes words are image evocation. So that means the way I'm speaking is I am seeing a film and I'm putting it into words in my inner realms. If we were to treat attention not as a specific relationship of limited of a limited part, or just a little part of the content of the moment, the whole moment is the main point of nature. There's endless variables. The logic of yesterday is not the logic of tomorrow. Simply, it can't be. The landscape changes. That means either dimensions are being added or taken away from your world, or dimensions are being added and taken away from the self, or you have stumbled enough to realize you've been witnessing your life as just the presence of energy in an instant. And from that instantaneity, if the person can become comfortable with the unknown, that means it's what most people, you can say, they look at the unknown and they're like, oh my God, what's there? You know? But you can say, if you could look at the unknown and be like, okay, glitch in the system found, now what? If you study the glitch in the system of your own perception, you will liberate yourself to a degree that you notice the attention is here, then what's in it? This is why we as creatures are so keen to survive biologically. If this was the future and there was cyberspace and they were connecting everybody's head to a computer where you could be like infinite information, you know, you could be infinite senses of cyberspace selves. You know, it's like you would choose, you know, should I be just a, you know, temporary individual biological being, or should I become this immortal consciousness in a massive program that is eternalizing as if human beings are long gone, but AI is somehow taking over the whole universe, building over the whole universe. There was something about this wallpaper I chose for tonight's episode, I would say, that I would say this is the modern mystic. You know, there's a saying in Sufi tradition, they say the pearl was like the idea of enlightenment, nirvana, to them. So the pearl, whoever had the pearl was the person who had the insight. Then there was the saying that would say the one who has the pearl in the mountains alone doesn't really have the pearl. It's the one who in the busy market can still have the pearl that has the real pearl, you know. So it's not about running away from suffering, it's about looking at it and being like how much of it is an outer realm, in accordance to that outer realm phenomenological, you can say, narrative, and how much of it is based on a subjective inner narrative. When I say phenomenological narrative, I mean just how much of your life is just how existence has happened, and how much of it is your opinion on how existence has happened. To be able to discriminate that between that. Anyways, guys, I hope this episode was helpful, and thank you for listening. Blessings.